Let's turn now to gun violence plaguing this country. The latest, a shooting in the San Pedro neighborhood of Los Angeles. 2 people were killed and 5 were injured when shots rang out during a car show and baseball game. The latest victims of gun violence. It is something the Stevens family knows all too well. Last May, as Lance Stevens was doing yard work and his mother was dropping off his sons from a sleepover, a random shooting shattered their quiet life. Lance and his mother were seriously injured, the 2 young children traumatized. Trymaine Lee traveled to Indianapolis to learn more about their story.
Nice shot, man.
Indianapolis couple, Lance Stevens and his wife, Sophia, tried to build their lives around avoiding violence, carefully selecting a home in a neighborhood where they thought they could raise their young sons in relative safety. But last May, a stranger with a gun found them anyway, piercing the family's peaceful suburban life. In a blink, 39-year-old Lance and his mother, Kim Tillman, joined the estimated 100,000 other Americans who survive gun violence each year.
He pulled a gun in my son's head.
Lance was shot in the head and leg. Kim, who was dropping off her grandsons after a sleepover, caught a wave of bullets in her arms, chest, and face.
I don't even know why he came over there and why he shot us.
Lance and Kim are among the nearly 750 people who were shot in Indianapolis last year who survived.
This is dead right here. My implant is here, but down here, this is all dead.
Your arm, your chest, and under your jaw.
Yeah.
Kim has permanent scarring from bullets that punctured her face, shattering her jawbone and several teeth.
At what point did you realize just how badly you've been injured?
I kind of still don't even realize it now.
Wounds you can see, but also wounds that you can't.
I had terrible nightmares, just waking up, thinking people were going to shoot me.
Lance and Sophia's 3- and 6-year-old sons were there that day. Neither boy was harmed physically, but both are processing trauma. The oldest boy, LJ, saw his father stumble into the house.
He's already seeing me, my head bleeding. My son's like, I don't want to be without you. He's saying like, I don't want you to die.
Their younger son was asleep in the back seat of his grandmother's car, bullets whizzing around him. The family assumed the 3-year-old saw nothing. In therapy, they learned he'd been stuffing it down.
He just unloaded, and we were amazed.
There are other costs too. Repairs to the Stevens' bullet-riddled home, the loss of a vehicle, and the family says $35,000 in medical bills combined. As the family tries to move on and make sense of what happened, I asked what they'd say to lawmakers who are reluctant to make gun reforms a priority.
Shame on you. Just shame on them. Unless it actually hits home, maybe to their kids, their grandmother, you know? Maybe if it hits home to them and they can actually see it.
Woo! Through it all, they still find hope and light. And they're standing up where bullets almost took them down.
Welcome back. So this Black History Month comes at a time where the actual teaching of Black history has become a very contentious issue. We are seeing multiple states restricting how race is taught in public schools, but so much of that history resonates strongly today. MSNBC's Trymaine Lee and the Into America podcast team are taking a deep dive into the legacies of the Reconstruction era in the United States and how it continues to shape this country. And Trymaine is joining us now. Trymaine, you and your team, you took a look at 2 communities, one in South Carolina, one in Georgia as well, a link really to the past and then to the present. Tell us about what you saw.
Yasmin, what I found is that while over time so many hopes and dreams have faded, others have been passed down from one generation to the next. And among those generations, dreams are literally owning a piece of America to call your own, owning land. Here's more.
Along Highway 10 in rural South Carolina, there's a town called Promised Land. It was founded in 1870, a safe place for and by formerly enslaved people, after newly elected Black lawmakers created a commission that would sell land and, by extension, independence to black people when others wouldn't.
What year does that say?
1883.
Reverend Willie Neal Norman Jr. is a Promised Land descendant.
When people ask me, where are you from? I tell them I live in the Promised Land, but I'm en route to the Promised Land.
4 million African Americans emerged from the Civil War, finally free, determined to reunite with family and build new lives from scratch.
I know during Reconstruction, there was a big effort to reunite with family.
Absolutely.
An exhibit at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, focusing on Reconstruction and its legacies, explores their journey. This month, MSNBC and the Into America podcast are teaming up with the museum for a rare glimpse behind the glass and into this special retelling of Black history.
What we have here are some of the items that were part of the history, and it reminds us that these are everyday people who are just trying to survive.
From the late 1800s through the early 20th century, free Black people established more than 1,200 settlements and towns across the Deep South and West. Promised Land, South Carolina is one of the few that still exists.
I think it's a very much American credo. You want to have land, you want to have the chance to make your own choices.
Reverend Norman's wife, Elistine, is another descendant of Promised Land's early settlers.
That longing to be able to have your own, and that's what was instilled from the generations on down.
Deep in rural Georgia, about 2 hours southeast of Atlanta, Ashley Scott is leading a group of 19 Black families in modern-day Black town building.
We want to create a community where people are not just making it, but being able to thrive versus just survive.
The dream is Freedom, Georgia. The families purchased 500 acres of old timberland that they hope to turn into a Black Mecca, where all residents share an economic stake. And instead of a traditional police force, a peace force, offering social services first, handcuffs second.
We hope that Freedom will be a foundation for building our own institutional structures so that racism is not there from its origination.
A new generation of Black families, rooted in the hopes of yesterday, but reaching toward the promises of tomorrow.
While Freedom, Georgia may be years away from ushering its first residents, the organizers hope that by linking the past with the present, they'll create a new Black future. Yasmin?
78-year-old Harvey Matthews grew up on a small farm in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C.
That tree is the one that my mom and my dad planted right there when I was about 9 years old.
Back then, most families in the surrounding areas were Black, descended from newly emancipated African Americans who settled here shortly after the Civil War. For nearly a century, they prospered. But in the decades to come, most of it would be erased in the name of progress, just not theirs.
The Venables came in and started stealing the Blacks from their homes and driving them away from their homes. And then as they did that, the community got smaller and smaller.
Today, the farm where Matthews grew up is a strip mall anchored by a Whole Foods.
Is it hard to believe that this community that you grew up in is now this?
Yes, it's hard. This was home at one time. And now it's everything else but that.
Down River Road, the 102-year-old Moses Macedonia Baptist Church, wedged between a bank and a high-rise, is the last visible remnant of the once thriving Black community. Marcia Coleman Adebayo is the pastor's wife.
Everyone asks me, what is this little Black church doing in the middle of downtown Bethesda? And the question is, what are you doing here? This church has been here for 102 years.
Now, another sacred piece of the community's history is in jeopardy. The land where the Moses Macedonia African Cemetery once stood is up for sale. Harvey and Marcia believe this area, bulldozed and paved over in the 60s, is the resting place for as many as 500 ancestors.
We will fight every single day to make sure that you are remembered and you're respected.
They formed the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition and won a court injunction blocking Montgomery County, which owns the land, from selling it to an investor. the County Planning Commission has appealed the ruling.
Well, we say you stand on holy ground.
The dispute highlights a growing nationwide movement by descendants and historians to find, preserve, and memorialize Black burial grounds, often the only remaining proof of lost Black communities.
This struggle is a struggle demanding, not asking, but demanding that our humanity is respected.
And for Harvey Matthews, it's a fight to tell a story about a place he was proud to call home.
This was a prosperous Black community.
Oh, yeah. I think ours was one of the best.